how you got started with contesting?
Yes. Norman Vincent Peale had the book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And I had picked it up, read it, and there were two things that really enticed me to research further, and that was when he said, you can have anything you want, provided you know what it is. See yourself as already having it. And those were three things that intrigued me. And I was, just a little happy homemaker, no education, high school education, period. And the mother of three and sitting home and needing a lot of little creature comfort things, And so I thought, well, that sounds exciting. So that night, my husband got in and I said, I read this book. And I said, what would you like? And he was reading the Dallas Morning News. And he said, well, looky here, Coca-Cola has a contest. And you can win an outboard motor. All you have to do is write 25 words while you take Coca-Cola on outings. And I said, and then outboard motor. And then he went on and finished reading his paper. Well, I went into the bedroom, and he's won an outboard motor. So I sit there, and I thought, Coca-Cola on outings, a pad. And I thought, we don't even drink Cokes. That's going to be a tough one. But I saw him sitting in a boat with his motor, enjoying himself. And so I wrote, he liked to go fishing by himself on weekends because he had a very serious job. And he was always stretched out, and the kids were too young to take him fishing at that point. And so he'd go out for the afternoon. Okay, so now I'm sitting there, and I see him in this boat, and I write, I'm a lone wolf fisherman. Cokes are my silent partners. They contribute, no yakety yak, only enjoyment when called upon. 25 words. Put it in an envelope, mailed it off, and actually said to him, I wonder how long it's going to take him to let us know we won. Now, that's positive thinking. I didn't know any better. I just knew I wrote that story, that incident, he's got to win it. 2 weeks later, the representative from Coca-Cola called and said, Mr. Hadsell, you won your outboard motor. I thought, well, that's nice. Now, what would we like to win? See, now what would we like to win? And my daughter said, well, I'd like to swim bicycle. And I said, and you want what color? I thought, well, everybody should do this because selected, here it is, see yourself as having it. So we had her sitting on a bicycle. And it was, now, at that point in time, there were many, many opportunities for contests. And most of them, see, a contest is when you have to complete something in 25 words or less, name something, write an essay. A sweepstake is when they just put your name in the pot and they draw, from 1 million entries, they draw your name. I didn't think of that as competition. I always thought the only competition you ever have is with yourself. And that's when you doubt yourself. So now, my daughter, we had to name a pony, and it got to be, now this was a fun thing. And my son, we didn't look for big things. Roller skates, bicycles, and things that were that children wanted. Boom boxes, for music and stuff. And so we started. We would sit at night, and I says, "Oh, we're going to get Pamela her bicycle, and we have to name a pony. How are we going to name a pony?" And I show them a picture of a pony, and they said, "Well, he's brown." And I said, "Yeah, he's brown. And what else? And what else does he do?" Well, I said, "Does he prance?" And then we call it Prance Charming. Prance Charming. And you get on a pony. What else? He bought two, Prince Charming. And these were what we call coined words. And that's what we send in. I don't know which entry won, but she had her swing bicycle. Okay, so then we got all the little stuff. Now I want linoleum for the floor, and I get linoleum. Then I want something else, and I get it. Now I'm thinking bigger. Now I want to win trips. And my younger son said, "Oh, let's go to a dude ranch." Do you know, we won this trip to a dude ranch, and stupid me, this was in Arizona, and that's when I was afraid of flying. And I won the prize. They're going to fly, and I said, "I don't fly. Can we drive down?" And then I didn't get the prize because you had to follow their rules. And so he was very, very ticked about that. You have to learn to fly. You have to learn to fly. Well, now, the next thing I wanted, the children wanted to go to Disneyland. And that meant flying, too. And I thought, well, I'll just brave it out. Really and truly, I was stupid on that area. But at that time, I didn't know better. And so we get to won this trip to Disneyland. We all get there. And it was a fabulous, fabulous trip. And later on, we did win a trip to Dude Ranch, and we did go to the Dude Ranch, and then we went a trip to the World's Fair, did go to the World's Fair, and one thing that was real funny, I was going to be 40 years old, and I had read that Paris is a city of light, love, and excitement, and I wanted to be on the 1st of January. I said, "What are we going to do this year?" And Pat said, "Well," I said, "I want to be in Paris, France, sitting at a sidewalk cafe, drinking wine on my 40th birthday." And I started to enter contests, only contests that were offering trips. And there were many of them. There's a lot of trips always contesting. Always 25 words or less. And I always used the same 25 words. I said, "I'm a poop couple with 3 kiddos, and I'd like to go to Paris, France, to recapture the rapture of springtime ecstasy in my fat, 40 frustrated years." That's the only thing I wrote. Well, the first time, one company investigates, before you win a big prize, you're investigated, they call you, or they come out, interview you, and they do that to find out if you are any way related to the sponsors, any way related, because contesting are really on the up and up. And if they wouldn't be, I mean, it wouldn't serve any purpose. So I had the interview, and everything went fine, but I only won 3rd prize, which is a Hammond electric organ, and it didn't win that prize. And I said, "Well, why did they give me an electric organ?" And you know, somebody said to cultivate patience. So I have this big electric Hammond organ, and here it is now. My birthday's the 1st of June, and here it is April already, and I still haven't had this trip now. We're going to have to plan this trip. We're going to be there drinking wine, and my husband even said, "Well, we have enough money, we'll go." I said, "No, I want to win this with a trip." Well, it seemed like the last minute. I send that entry off, and lo and behold, I got a phone call and said, "Mr. Hadsell," I used his name and my name, "you won a trip to Venice, Italy." And I thought, well, I don't want to, I've been to Venice, I want to go to Paris. And the man said, "Well, you can change, there's 1st class, and you can change whatever you want to do." And he said, "When would you like the tickets?" I said, "Like right now." And he had a messenger come and bring these tickets. And we got on the plane, And to make a long story short, on my 40th birthday, I was at that sidewalk with my husband drinking wine. So we did this. This is something else I need to bring up because I thought this was, well, it was nice. My husband and I are sitting here one afternoon, and I just got back from a trip, a long trip, and sometime he went with me and sometime he didn't. And he'd go with me first time, and then the second time he got bored because I was always counseling people, and then at night I was in and he knew everything, so. But anyway, we're sitting here, he said, let's do something let's do something exciting. What do you want to do? I said, you know, I love New York. I said, and I noticed in the paper that they're having this, the best little whorehouse in Texas. And I said, I would love to go and see that off-Broadway show. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, let's have lunch, and I'll start calling the airlines, and we'll see what we can do. He says, sounds like fun, doesn't it? We're eating lunch, and we come back here for coffee, and the phone rings. Mrs. Hadsell, I said, yes. He said, I'm Rich Little, you don't know him, but he was producing a show to tell the truth in New York. And he said, your name came up as a very, very good contestant. How would you like to come to New York and be on my show? I said, I looked at Pat and I thought, God, is this for real? And I said, what is it, Tom? He said, well, it's to tell the truth, and the show had just started. And he said, we'll pay all your expenses first class, and what else do you want? And I said, could I have tickets to this off-Broadway show? Will Success Ball Rock Concert? And he said, and what else? And I said, well, my husband wanted to come. Well, okay, we'll do a tour. We'll give your husband a ticket also, and what else? I mean, you know, when they want you, they want you. And he said, everything that we advertise, you will also get. Electric blankets, mix, whatever they were advertising. I said, when do you want me? When do you want? He said, well, you can come this week or next week. And I said, well, let's see. And my husband says, this week. So I said, how about this week? Well, we'll have your tickets for you by courier tomorrow morning. So we went to New York, had this hotel, saw the Broadway play, was there 3 days. They usually pay all expenses, and they give you a voucher if you want a cab to go wherever you want to, eat wherever you want to, and entertain you. Really, it's nice to be on these talk shows. Well, we had our little thing again. So what is it? I mean, you know, there were many, many instances where I would hear of something. The thing, I'm digressing, I'm sorry, because you're interested in being a winner. And all of you out there are winners. You know that. And you can have anything you want, provided you know what it is. See yourself as having it. And if there's a delay in results, don't be disappointed. Maybe you need to cultivate a little more patience. That's all it is. And it's yours. And you say, but the competition is so fierce, so fierce. And I says, everything is competition. How long? I mean, eventually, if you stay with something long enough and strong enough, it's energy. And it's got to come to you. That's the law of attraction. It's out there for anybody. I never looked at it as competition. I remember when after I had the publicity and had won that house in Las Colinas and had won all the cars and whatever I needed or wanted, this was very interesting because that night we went to dance. And we're dancing, and right as you came in, you signed in, and they had this fishbowl, put your name in at the end of the night. They had fruit cakes because it was Christmas time, and they had this big boom box. And my daughter had been wanting this huge boombox that had all these acoustics and things out. And I looked at it and I said, oh, there's Pamela's Christmas present. Well, the woman that was taking the tickets, overheard me. And she laughed and she said, well, Mrs. Hadsell's here. So really and truly, it's stupid to put your name in the Hadsells won the boombox already. All right, what did I do? They were giving me their energy. Everybody in that room gave me energy because they knew now we'd won this house. And we're dancing, and this man said, I guess she's got, and Pat said, she's got the boombox. And they're making a joke of it, a joke. And they don't know that I didn't take their energy, they gave it to me. And that night, when his boss, now it's time to have the drawing, and here's that fishbowl full of names. And the boss said, I'm not going to have anything to do with this. Somebody come up and draw a name. And a woman came up and she said, I'll get a different name. And she whisked around and pulled a name, and it was my name. Okay, this is energy. This is energy. This is what they do. And yes, you can get energy from someone else. If they're negative, I mean, why not?
You mentioned the house. Can you tell us more about how you won the house?
Yes. I came back after my trip, and in Dallas, we have a group of women that get together, and we call them the contest. We call them the range riders. And when we got there, we would swap entry blanks. We would stand up and say what we won this month. We won this and this and this and this. 1 month I won a prize every day. 30 prizes, 1 prize every day. Some of them would win 4 or 5 of them, and we had a lot of fun, and they were very supportive. So the night I got there, one of the women said, oh, you won the world's, you went to New York on your way to Paris. Did you stop at the World's Fair? And I said, yeah, my son won a trip to the World's Fair. So he was with us, and then after the trip, we were at the World's Fair, he went back home on a plane, and someone met him and so forth. And we went on to Paris. And she said, while you were there, did you see that Formica house? She said, that's an entire United States contest, and Formica is having a new product that they're sponsoring, and they're going to build a house someplace in the United States. And all you have to do throughout the United States, the builders were building their houses, but they were using this molding that Formica was very, very proud of using. So anybody throughout the United States, you had to visit one of the homes that had these entry blanks that were using Formica. Well, in my area, it was Garland, the only place that had this thing. And she said, well, you could enter. I said, no, I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. Well, it's in Garland, and it's closing next week. And so on the way home, driving home, because Dallas is 27 miles from Irving, rather, all I could think about was, God, I'd like to win a new house. That's perfect. Yeah, I think I'll win that house. So the next day, it's drizzling, and two of my friends that were in this contest club with me live in Irving. So I called one of them and I said, let's go over and see that Formica house and enter. And she said, you know, they've already picked the entries. It's in New York, and they've already picked the entries. And she said, no. And the other one was having her rug shampoo. She couldn't go. And I tried. I said, I'll even buy you a pizza on the way. Let's go. And nobody would go with me. It's starting to drizzle, rain, and something actually pulled me out. The next thing I knew, I'm in the car driving 53 miles to go to that Formica house. And when I got there, I sat in one of the chairs and I looked at everything around there. And I'm already deciding that I want Spanish furniture. I'm already building the inside of the house. And there wasn't anybody there except the woman that sat, at the open house. I registered my name, and I registered Pat's name. And I took an entry blank home. And that night, I'm reading the entry blank, and it said, "You must have visited the home." And I said, "Oh my God." I put in Pat's name, and Pat might win this. Do you know that Saturday morning, Pat got up, and I said, "We're getting in the car. You're driving to Garland, and you're going to look at that house. So when they call you, you can say you visited that." He did. He got to where he believed what I said. We drove all that way so he could look at that house. And that was it. It was a done deal. Now we come home, and he draws the plans for the house. And he tells the kids, "Mama's going to win us this big house." Where do we want it? We're out looking for lots. We've got the plan here, so when they come, we can be ready. And then it was a month. Now the contest closed that weekend. It was a month later when somebody on the phone called Pat. I'm in Dallas, and they called Pat, and they asked Pat, "Is Mrs. Hadsell there?" "No, she's at a meeting." "Your husband?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Did she enter that, did she go to that Formica home?" And Pat said, "Oh, we were both there. I'm so impressed with that laminated Formica. We were so impressed." And he said the right thing. And that was it. And he said, we're just checking everybody to see if they actually did go, and there's nothing here. Thank you, Mr. Hadsell, for your time. That was all he said. He asked, are you related to anybody at the house, number one. Number two, any relations that work for Mike? Those were questions. So he was on the phone 5 minutes answering all this. And he knew that because we knew when we got a big prize, we'd have to have an investigation, we call it. And so I came home that night, and he was ecstatic. Well, we won our house, and all we did was, I wonder how long it's going to take them to let us know we won. And that's all I told the kids. And so it was about another month later. Morning, I woke up, and I said, the kids were at breakfast, the 2 boys were still there, and my daughter was in college, and I said, well, listen, they're going to let us know we won this house. For God's sake, act surprised. And they went off to school. And my husband said, are you sure they're coming? I said, yeah. And I said, just stay in bed. And I says, pretend, we're just going to wait for them. Well, at 2 o'clock, and now it's 1 o'clock, and I went to the bakery to get some bakery, and I'm getting ready to put the coffee pot on when they come, and nothing happens. And about 2:30, I get this phone call, and they say, Mrs. Hadsell, when does your husband get off work? And I said, well, he's here now. They were waiting for him to get off work so they could tell us together. I said, well, he's here. And I said, he just took the day off. Well, then we're coming right out. We're representatives, vice president of Formica, and our PR man. We want to come out and tell you something very, very interesting for you. And I thought, yeah. And then I, of course, reminded Pat to act surprised, They came in the door. I acted surprised. Oh my God. Oh no, not me. Oh no. And I told Pat, don't show him the plans. So we're talking, and he said, well, where do you want it? And I said, well, there's a new area, you know, I said, and we have the plans. And the guy looked at me, and I said, well, we were planning on building a house, but we didn't tell them that they were going to pay for it, you know. And so we had all the plans there, and he couldn't believe it, you know. And I said, yeah, we had plans of enlarging this place, and that's how it came about. And from that period on, they hired an interior decorator. They hired so many people because it was publicity for their Formica. They would call me. They send me flowers. One weekend, he'd always call and say, are you happy? Are you happy? Because at that time, the National Enquirer, which is that rag magazine, called and said, if there's any negative things, because this is the first time a house had ever been given, if there's any negative things, tell us and we'll pay you for the negative. And I says, get it real, and hung up. And I had that offer 2 or 3 times, and they were aware that they were looking for negative things. And there weren't any negative. But he'd call up and say, are you happy? Is there anything we can do? And every time they came, they wined us and dined us at the best hotels. And so one day he called, and he said, what's your favorite place? And they were building, and he kept coming and visiting, bringing me candy, flowers, and so forth. And I said, God, would I like to go to New York? Okay, we'll send you to New York. And they brought us first class tickets. My husband and I went to New York. And at that time, the play was on Broadway, Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? That was the play I wanted to see. And they sent me to New York. And while I was in New York, I did a lot of publicity with one of the magazines, the Good Housekeeping magazine. And they interviewed me and so forth. And then they had the house open for a month where they could, people came in, and I was just the hostess. And they had people there that took care, cleaned the house and so forth. And then it was turned over to us officially. Gold keys. We had a gold key. My husband and I each were given a gold key. And then he asked, listen, that's a big, at that time, that period, in the 50s, 60s rather, income tax was a big challenge if you won a lump sum and you had to pay it right away. And he said, if income tax is a problem, we'll take care of it. You know, I mean, they couldn't do enough. They couldn't do enough. That was fabulous.
Known as the lady who wins every single competition you take part in. You've won some 7 trips to Europe, you've won a house, you've won multiple cars, and you've taught your kids to do the same. You've even written a book that has sold some 3.5 million copies. Now, you claim you're able to do this using a methodology you developed called SPEC. Can you tell us a little bit about the SPEC system?
Yes, SPEC, and everybody should have that in their vocabulary if they're wanting material things. SPEC should be a word, a password for you if you're wanting material things. SPEC is selected, projected, expected, collected. So let's give you an example. You're there and you're at a showcase, and all of a sudden you see this diamond necklace. Hypothetically, this is, all right, you're seeing it. Okay, now you are seeing it, so you select it. Now you project it. How are you going to project it? You're going to see yourself wearing it. You're going to stand in front of the mirror, and then you're going to be at a social gathering, and people are going to say, oh, what a wonderful necklace. This is putting energy into this. And now you have already selected it, you've already expected it because it's here, and then you projected it, Now you want it. Now you want it. So you project it. And when you project it, that's when you see things happening. And I don't know how it's going to come about. Is your boyfriend going to buy it for you? Do you win it? Does your husband buy it for you? Do you have a lot of money and it comes to you because you've now selected it, and projected it. Now you can collect it and it's part of yours.
So the system is called SPEC. Let's start with the S in that SPEC. What does that stand for?
That means SPEC is selected. What is it that you want? Is it a car? Is it jewelry? Is it a trip? What is it? So you, first of all, you project it. Here we go. First of all, you select it. You select what do you want? You select it. The next thing you do is you project it. What do you do? How do you project it? You make a little scenario. So you want a car. So you see the car. You see the color of the car. You get in the car. You smell the upholstery in the car. You feel the car. So what you're doing, you're projecting it. And it's just a very, very easy technique. Now what you do after that, and you can keep on doing this, I mean, sitting in your car, now you expect it. When is it coming? When will it be here? I've been waiting. When will it be here? And then all of a sudden, and it varies every time you make a projection. It varies when it comes. How does it come about? It comes about in different ways. Mine mostly came by entering contests.
Helena, one of the most fascinating stories I came across in your book was the story of how you attracted an opportunity to not only meet Art Linkletter on a show, and that was a dream of yours, but to actually win a big prize in that show. Could you tell us that story?
Yes. Or how, first of all, how can you get on it? When I went to want to see Art Linkletter. We were in the waiting in line. I was one of the last people in line, and so when the young man that directed us into the show, there were just a certain number of people that were invited. I mean, that's all the room they had. When he came up to me, he closed the door. He said, "We have no more room," and he gave tickets to the next show that was being taped in the next studio. And I told him, I said, "I don't want to go to the next studio. I want to see Art Linkletter." So he closed the door. All the other people went to the next studio for taping. I didn't. I sat right there. About 10 minutes later, he puts his head out the door. He said, "You still here?" I said, "Well, I came to see Art Linkletter." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, just a minute." He said, "I'll see if there's a seat available." He came out, he said, "There's one seat available." And he said, "But it's up there in the balcony, and I guess nobody's coming, so you can have that seat." So he directs me up there. Okay, now I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden Art Linkletter comes out on the stage, looks around. He said, "You know, we're doing our Christmas show, and somebody in the audience today is going to win a fabulous prize." And he looks around and says hi to a few people, and then he comes up and he walks up. He had to walk up 3 people and then a platform, 3 more people, because I'm up here. And he looks at me and he said, "Do I know you?" And I said, "No, I've never been here before." And he said, "You sure I don't know you?" "No, I've never been here before." He said, got my hand, and he said, "Well, you're the one that's going to win the Christmas present." So I walk on down there, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden they wheel in this huge, huge box. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's a huge television. That's what it looked like. And so I'll lift up the lid. I lift up the lid, and out jumps a little miniature midget's Santa Claus with the hat and so forth. And he kisses me and hands me a $1,500 LeCoutre diamond wristwatch. That was my birthday present from Art Linkletter. And then Art looks at me, he says, "Gotcha." And then during the break, this was very interesting. I then sat on the outskirts there and watched the rest of the show. And then after it's over, and they have, you know, the commercials and the things that roll out and all of the things, what is it called? The wrap-up. And we're standing there because I won this huge prize. And Art keeps looking at me and looking at me and said, "Don't I know you? I know you, don't I?" And he's just so insistent. And I didn't have the heart to tell him what I'd done. So what did I do? The night before, I'm wanting to be on the Art Linkletter show. I sit there in my chair and I say, "Art Linkletter, when you see me, you'll know me, and I'm going to be on your show. Art, here I am. I'm going to be on your show. I'm going to wear an orange sweater." Now, I asked, did the orange sweater attract him? I don't know. Why did he walk up all those steps and get me from the entire audience? I just attribute it to as a projection. This is projection. So I had my Christmas present all in one. Now these things you can do, and it gets to be fun, and you'll say, "We're pushing minds around," or "You're the work of the devil." Not so. Believe me, when you do this, they have the opportunity to accept or reject the idea. You always have free will. And in this area, I looked familiar to him because I was there projecting him. And the orange sweater was I said, when you see me, I'll be on your show.
Now, in the book, Helene, you also mentioned how you were able to teach some other people in line for the show to also use their mind to win.
Okay. After the Art Linkletter show, when they tape in Hollywood, they tape in different studios. And they had lots of shows there that were giving prizes. I mean, they had, I don't even remember the titles or the names of them. So I got into the next show, and what they were doing at random, picking people from the audience and asking questions, and then some way a dial went off or whatever, and the dial spun, and then you could win that prize. Well, when I got into that studio, all I could think about was, I had talked to my mother earlier on the phone, and she said, I said, "What would you like for Christmas?" And she said, "I've got this little 12-inch television. I'd like a big color television." So when I got in there, I thought, here's an opportunity to bring my mother her color television. Now this takes a little, I don't know what happened. All I know is I'm sitting in the front row, and there's a mother and a daughter beside me. Okay, this wheel goes around and so forth, and he chooses me. And something in the audience or whatever, I don't remember the particulars, but they do the dial, and it comes up with the color television. And I said, they take your name and where do you want it mailed to? And then I send it to my mother. So that was fine. And so this woman sat beside me with her daughter. She said, "I never won anything in my life." And I said, "Well, what'd you like?" And she says, "Oh, my refrigerator's on the blink. I'd give anything." And they had refrigerator, stoves, televisions, lawnmowers, everything up there. And we had to go out for lunch. And in this at that time, there was a cafeteria, and you could graze for an hour, and then you'd come back to the studio, because they might have had difficulty getting that studio full of people. and it was during the day and so forth. So, and it was in September, so there weren't that many tourists out there. So we go back, and I said, while we're sitting there, I said, you really want that refrigerator? Yes, yes. I said, well, let's play a game. And she, what kind of a game? I said, let's project that refrigerator, that you win it. I said, I will give you energy and everything. Don't think of another thing now. Just think of your refrigerator. Don't think about they're going to invite me, they're going to ask a question, they're going to do the dial and something else is going to come up, because so many have to go, it has to be this, 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 and this. End result is what you want. And all you want is that refrigerator. Okay. And so here 3 of us are. I'm doing nothing but seeing her win the refrigerator. She's game for it. She said, if I can win that refrigerator, I said, don't say you never won anything, because here you have an opportunity. And the daughter said, yes, I'll work with it. Well, now we go into the studio, and there's not that much seating. And so they're dividing us up here. And he puts me down here, and they're up there in the rafters. And she's looking down at me, and I keep saying, refrigerator, refrigerator, because I want her to hold that thought. And the second or third that they picked out of the audience, they go up there, and they point to her, and they ask the question, and then they roll the thing, and it comes up a refrigerator. And she won the refrigerator. So after we got through there, kind of, and she said, oh, I'd like to have you around. She says, there's lots of things I'd like to win. And I said, you already have the technique. You already have the technique. Sometimes it works just on the moment. Sometimes it works on the moment. Sometimes it takes a little longer. But there is no failure. There can be a delay in results depending what you're looking for. Especially if you're entering contests. It may take 5 or 6 weeks before they notify you that you won. So you have all that period in there to be projecting. Yes, anybody can do this. I've had a number of students here that never had anything, and all of a sudden they want something, and I should keep all the testimonials I had. One of the most exciting testimonials was this young man called me from California. Mrs. Hadsell, if I was there, I'd squeeze you. I said, oh? She said, I'm a student here, and I'm limited on funds, and my mother's subsidizing me, and she keeps saying, what are you doing with all this money you're spending? Do you know what she got me for? I go home for Christmas, and I'm expecting a big check. What does she give me? She gives me a copy of your book, and she tells me, why don't you follow the principles in this book? And she says, and earn your own money. She also gave him 100 stamps and envelopes and cards, and because I have a detailed description in the book how to enter contests. And then he said, I went up there and I was ticked at my mother. She said, so I read your book, and here I'm looking at the stamps, and I'm looking at the envelopes, and then I get to thinking, I read your book again. And I thought, well, if she can do it, maybe I can. And he says, I wanted a new car. But he said, I wanted $25,000 because for the summer months, I wanted to go to Europe. So he said, I then entered, and he says, I was amazed how many contests they have in magazines. I went to the library and read all these contests available, and I chose the ones, like you said, the ones that I wanted, only the ones that were offering cars and money. And he said, I want you to know, I had my car, and a week later, $25,000. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, the immediate family, my children, were now growing up, and my son wanted a Corvette, which he incidentally got on his own. But one thing that I had never, well, it was, like I said, before I won the house, we lived in a very comfortable place, and I continually wanted to redecorate. Like I wanted a stove, and I projected for a stove, and all of a sudden, the contest was over with, and I won $1,000. I didn't win $1,000. I didn't win the stove. And I went to the contest club, and everybody had won in this particular contest, and I had such good entries, and I couldn't understand why I didn't win my stove. And so I thought, everybody won televisions and everything, and I was perplexed on this. But 2 days later, I won $1,000 in another contest. And so I rationalized, and I told the children, well, this is for my stove. I have $1,000. I thought it was coming by a stove, and this is my prize. I went out and bought a stove at Sears. 3 days later, I have a phone call from this General Electric, and said, we overlooked telling you, Mrs. Hadsell, the prize, and it'll come in the mail, and you won a stove, a GE stove. And I said, oh, I already bought one. And he said, well, if you'd bought a GE, we would have given you your money back. But see, I got premature and already. So this was something I learned later on. Always, I mean, there can be a delay in results. And yes, I taught the children. They were on their own and did their own coloring, and they had their own projects, and we were all very, very supportive of that. Later on, there were always people that would call or come, and that's when I was prompted to write the book. I wrote the book simply because there was a demand for it, and I thought, well, maybe they'll leave me alone. I'm not a witch. And on the book, I put witchcraft in order to tell them that I was not using anything. But you still had people that would call and say, hey, you already won, oh, we won 3 Hammond organs. This is a church, and can you donate one? Yes, I donated them all to different areas. There were things that, I mean, I didn't put in my book.
What kind of contests did your children enter, and how young were they when they started?
My younger son, the one, this is my teenager. He was a teenager. And he's getting ready to go to college. And there were lots of things that he wanted. And this contest sponsored for teenagers, write in 50 words or less. Well, this was another one. My older son, 50 words or less. Why you would like to represent the United States in Europe. And he wrote the most fabulous essay. It was really, really, it was very touching and very good. And he won his trip to Europe and toured Europe. The other son was a little more materialistic. And this was an opportunity. And he was just getting out, going to high school now. This was an opportunity to go to New York, and you had to design a piece of jewelry. And you had to be a teenager, 12 to 14. The prize would be this diamond ring, a trip to New York. You would go to this fabulous place. I'm not interested in names of people, houses that have clothing manufactured. I don't even recall the name, but he did. And where you would pick out your wardrobe. He could pick out his wardrobe. He would get a Lindy Star sapphire. He'd get a gold wristwatch, 3 days, and I think it was $2,000 in cash, plus the mother could come with him. Okay, he wanted that. Okay. So he goes out. I said, what are you going to do? He said, well, the first thing you think of as a kid, and everybody then was having a guitar and imitating all these country westerns. And he says the first thing they do, they'd think of a guitar and they'd, make it as a guitar. And I said, well, what's the other thing? He said, well, and he thought, he says, I think I've got it. And he just picked up a piece of sheet music, and there's a staff there, and there's notes. And so he went out into the garage and got the little wire, made the, bend the wire, the kind of wire that you use for soldering stuff, and made a staff. And then he took 2 of my beans and sprayed them, and he called it the Lindy Star Go-Go. And that was advertising Lindy Star sapphires, and it was so damn original, who could possibly think of that? And then he did a step further. He said, he made it. He actually made it. And I said, well, why you made it? I said, why did you send it to him with your entry? He's seeing something. He got a little box and mounts this thing in, and it was lovely, really, and put it and send it in. I wonder how long it's going to take him to let us know I won all this stuff. So one day, it was, I was sitting there, and this morning I woke up, and I said, they're going to call us today. Got to be here. And he was playing Little League, and he needed tennis shoes. And he said, I've got to get tennis shoes before the game. It's at 5 o'clock. I said, well, we'll go as soon as they call us. And I was waiting in the mail, or call us, or in the mail. Nothing came in the mail. And I'm sitting there, and he was the one that used to say, you don't know everything. Later on, he changed it. When my husband said, but she does know. And so from that period on, but you don't know everything, he'd get angry because this is a teenager. And so I said, at 4 o'clock, now he has to be at Little League at 5. And I thought, well, I missed that one. How could I miss that one? When you have a feeling, there's a knowing feeling. There's a calm feeling. And it's not like this, like when you're waiting to have your name drawn at someplace. It's a different feeling. And I had this calm feeling, and so we get in the car, and he's in the car, and the phone rings. I had the door open, the phone rings, and I said, go in there and answer, tell him you're a boy, tell him you're a boy. And his name is Chris. He went in there, and the man, who am I talking to? This is Chris Hadsell. He said, are you a boy or a girl? He says, I'm all boy. And they hung up the phone, and that was it. That was it. What they had done in New York, they were giving a prize, top prize, to 1 girl and 1 boy. And when they looked at Chris's name, they thought, this might be a girl. So we got to find out. And when I was able to visit, when we went to New York, the people that judged, the judges were there and took us out to dinner because they wanted to meet the 2 top winners, the girl and the boy. The one woman that was a judge called me aside, and she said, we had so much great difficulty deciding on Chris and another boy, Michael or whatever. We knew Michael was a boy, but she said, I wanted Chris to win. And these guys already said, let's give it to Michael because he's a boy. Let's get out of here. And she said, I will do that on one condition. If you call Texas, and if Chris is a boy, will you give this to Chris? And that's what happened. One of the judges called, and it was Chris, and that's how we did it. Then another time that was, sometimes it's real close. Another time, this younger son said, well, Mother, you've won all these things, but you never won a car. And I said, I don't need a car. I was driving a Lincoln. I don't need a car. But just prove to me that you can win a car. And you don't ever need to prove anything. When you're taking Silva training, Jose says, don't ever prove anything. Prove it to yourself. And so I thought, well, okay, I never won a car. Let's do this. And a local radio station was having a car, and they were giving Datsuns away. Okay, all you had to do was get by the phone, and at random, they would choose your name. And when they would call, you would have to say, my favorite radio station is KLIF. That's all you had to do. And if you said that, then your name would be in a pot. And at the end of 6 weeks, they would draw one name a week. And at the end of 6 weeks, you were in the pot. And then you'd go to the dealership, and then you would draw which car you would win. So it was you had to listen to that radio all day long, because you never knew when they were going to call you. So you had to stay home, and at that time there weren't cell phones. And so I was, the first week I listened all week long, and they called a name, and the man, and of course they would put it over the telephone, Mr. Hammond, so-and-so from Grapevine, what is your favorite radio station? He said, KLIF 1190 on the dial. Well, you're in the drawing now. You've won that. You knew you won a car when he said that. Well, the second week, was in the second week, I'm listening, and it was a Friday afternoon, and we had rental property, and my husband is out there fixing some of the water plumbing that was leaking. And the children were around, and so he called me and said he needed one wrench to help with this. But he couldn't go to get it because these children are out there, and he had a hole, and he was concerned about the children. Get that part. And I said, no, I can't, because they're going to call me today. I know they're going to call me, and I can't leave the house. He said, damn it, put him on hold. I need that part. Now get that part. He was very angry. So I got in the car, and I have the radio on in the car, and I'm getting his part, and I had to run all over town because this part, it was some kind of a wrench. Finally got it, took it out to where he was working, threw it down, and come back to the house. But on the radio station, I'm listening, and they said, we have the second week winner, and during the break, we will play it for you. And I am devastated. How could that happen? I thought, I knew I had that car. And I come home, and I am so disappointed, and sitting there, and he caused that because I know they called me, and damn it, and I'm angry at him, really. A few minutes, the telephone rang. It's my older son, the one that left and only comes back and brings his dirty laundry and checks his mail. And he called, he says, Mother, where were you? I said, I was out getting Daddy a part for some of the plumbing. He said, while you were gone, he said, the phone rang, and they asked, they just said, Mrs. Hadsell, what is your favorite radio station? And I had tacked up around the house, because I thought, if my husband calls, he's not into this. I said, when they call and ask what your favorite station is, say KLIF 1190 on your dial is your favorite. And there's the phone in the kitchen. And he looks up, and it said, when they call, and he read, oh, my mother's favorite radio station is KLIF 1190 on the dial. And the man says, congratulations, you just won your mother a Datsun.